Okay, it's about 6 o'clock. That clock there is a little bit slow, so we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to start out with just a welcome. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I think it's been since March that we've been together physically, but the Zoom meetings worked and we were able to carry on the business as best we can, but it's much better to be here in person. So we all thank you for being with us. So we're just going to start with a moment of silence in the pledge. If y'all want to rise and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, great. The next item is approval of the agenda. Oh, that's nice. We good back there? All right. Just tell me if we need to speak up or do something different. Okay, so approval of the agenda. If I don't hear any objections, we'll consider the agenda approved. All right, next item is approval of minutes from our regular meeting on May 12th. We need a motion for that. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. We approve the minutes from May 12th. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. That looks like, any opposed? No? Okay, so that looks like 8. Mr. Moulton's not with us tonight, so I got to count to 8 tonight instead of 9. So under Office of Board Chairman, just a reminder, we have a meeting next week at 6 o'clock for public input on the budget, public hearing. And then June 9th will be another meeting. So we meet the next 3 weeks in a row. And then we'll make a decision on the last meeting in June on the 9th, if we need it or not. All right. Moving on to informational items. The following items are for information only and do not require board action. We have 2 financial reports from January and February. Remember, these are always a little bit behind just because of the process that we use. Any questions on those for Mr. Traxler? Okay, so moving on to consent items. The following items will be voted on as a group. Individual items may be discussed prior to a vote being taken. And we have 2 consent items. We need a motion. Actually, we have 4 consent items. Sorry about that. We need a motion to start talking about them.
I move to hear the consent items.
So it's been moved and seconded that we hear the consent items. I'll go through them one at a time here. The first one is construction bids for Belvedere Elementary. Dr. Foster.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As you guys are aware, we put the bid out for the Belvedere Elementary School project. And we're extremely excited to come back to the board and report that that final bid came in $2.7 million under budget from what I brought to the board doing CD design. So the total budget we're asking for is $13.9 million. The construction budget itself came in at $10.7. So we're excited about that. And we ask for the board's consideration to move forward with this project.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. Any questions for Dr. Foster? Yeah, very good. Thank you, Dr. Foster. All right, the next one is items to be declared surplus and the method of disposal. This is pretty routine, what we do with the items that we have in excess. The next one is the Whole Kid Foundation donation to Ridge Spring Minetta. This was a $3,000 donation from Whole Kids Foundation, and there'll be the funds will be used to purchase general materials and supplies and in construction materials and supplies at Ridge Spring Minetta High School. All right, any questions on that one? No? All right, so the next one is the proposed schedule of school board meetings, and you'll see that as an attachment to the package there. Just kind of bringing your attention to a couple things on those. Mr. Lawrence had a very good suggestion. In the past couple years, we've been going out once a quarter to the different areas and doing a school board meeting. And sometimes that presents some challenges to do our business and for the school. So there was a suggestion to go out once a quarter and do a town hall meeting so that you'd be able to really have an interaction with the public, more so than a typical school board meeting. So you'll see that schedule has those each quarter there. And I think what we did is we just started from where we kind of left off and went from there. Most months have 2 meetings with the exception of July, November, and December. And then you'll see some of the budget meetings there too. So, any questions on the calendar there? And those are just of the school board meeting. Okay, so I think that's all 4 of the consent items. So we had a motion and a second. So any other discussion on those? All those in favor, raise your hand. That's 8. None opposed. So that's that motion passes. All right, moving on to individual items. We'll do each one of these individually. The first one is personnel appointments. You have a list that's attached to the package there. Do I hear a motion for that?
Move we approve the administration's recommendation for employment appointments.
Second?
So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the administration's recommendations for personnel appointments. Any discussion on those? All right, all those in favor, raise your hand. None opposed, so that's 8. That's unanimous. All right, the next one is out of district transfer requests. We also have a list in the packet there, and most of these are on the peripheral of our county there. We need a motion for that one.
Move we approve the recommendation for out-of-district transfer.
So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the administration's recommendation for out-of-district transfer requests. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor, raise your hand. That's 8. None opposed. That's unanimous, Kim. The next one is changes to policy EGAD. And this is establishing a district policy for federal copyright laws and regulations, and it's really for electronic type things, something that we didn't have before, with the electronic age that is upon us now. Any questions on that for Mrs. Hart? Okay, so we need a motion for that one.
I make a motion that we accept the changes to the EGAD copyright compliance and administrative rule copyright.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we approve the policy EGAD, basic copyright laws and regulations. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor, raise your hand. That's 8. None opposed. All right, the next one is adoption of policy IMG for service animals and administrative rule IMG service animals. This is the first reading of that. I think we all had it in our packet there, and you see that this is a brand new policy to avoid or to comply with the ADA laws, Title II of the ADA laws, so a new policy. Any questions on that for Mrs. Hart?
I really question the ability to implement a portion of that should they ever come to pass. I think you know what portion I'm talking about.
Yeah. Some of it is a challenge for those of you in the audience. It's attached to our agenda, so you can read it, and it will be some of it will be a challenge to implement. But it's the law, so we have to figure out how to do it. Thank you, Dr. Bradley. Any other discussion on that? Okay, so we need a motion for the first reading of that new policy.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the adoption of policy IMG.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded that we adopt the policy IMG, the first reading, so we'll see it again next in the meeting. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor, raise your hand. That's 8, so that motion passes. All right, last one under individual items, revisions to Code of Student Conduct. Dr. Foster?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, there have been no changes from the first reading. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that the board may have. Mr. Spears is here as well.
Thank you, Mr. Spears. Any other questions on the Code of Student Conduct? We saw the first reading of that, I guess, our last meeting. All right, so we will entertain them.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Nissen.
It's just because I have no background on the subject, but I just want to make sure that the addition we made around being under the influence and added CBD oil, there's no legal challenge to that, right?
No, sir, there's not.
Okay.
Good question. Good question. Any other questions? All right, so I don't think we got a motion yet, so we need a motion for that.
I make a motion that we approve the revisions to the student code.
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we approve the revisions to the Student Code of Conduct. All those in favor, raise your hand. That's 8, none opposed. Okay, so that's unanimous. Moving on to individual board members. I don't think anyone has anything in this section here. And then we're on to Office of Superintendent, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And for my update tonight, I have invited our Excel director, Beth Taylor, to come and share the progress of the program. So I'll turn it over to her.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Mr. Lawrence. I'd like to start by just thanking you for the opportunity to share a brief update on how our program is coming along. So, just as a reminder, in our, I think it was April, right? April board meeting, that was a Zoom meeting, we provided an update that included some items listed here, like our name change from Mosaic to Excel. We updated our mission and our vision, as well as some of our committee members. We created our implementation plan timeline, and we talked about our plans for the summer. And I also wanted to just let you know that the facility is being taken care of. They are there all the time helping us out. So it's going to be really great once we get it all taken care of. Just a quick update on staffing. After the approval a few minutes ago, we are 3 positions away from being fully staffed. We're coming up on hiring our secretary bookkeeper. We have 1 more behavior technician position to fill, and we're also still looking for our lead interventionist. The committee has taken on 3 major processes since our April board meeting. The first of those processes is what we're calling our entry criteria. And this is the process by which students will be considered for entrance into the program. Most of the entry criteria follows the supports that the schools will provide to students through interventions so that we have data and documentation before they come into our program. One of the biggest things about the entry criteria that the committee discussed was whether or not students would start at the very beginning of school during the 2021 school year, so day 1. And most of our, actually all of our teachers and administrators on the committee felt very strongly that they wanted to make sure that any student who may require services from Excel were on their homeschool campus to start the school year. They felt it very important that the students have an opportunity to build relationships with their teachers and their classmates, given the fact that what our goal is that the student would be able to return successfully to their homeschool. So they would be returning to a place where they have already built and developed relationships. The other conversation we had around the start of next school year is specific to the recent school closures and the desire to ensure that we are identifying truly the students who need our program. And given the recent school closures, we are all recognizing that the students who may have needed the program in March may not be the same students who need our program in August. So this will give us time to get to know our students again when they return and ensure that we're identifying the students who need our program the most. Oh, I'm just clicking away. I apologize. Look at that. Y'all didn't even say anything. All right, I'm going back. Okay, exit criteria. So this is the process that our students will follow prior to being considered to return for their homeschool. So one of the biggest changes that we've made compared to the alternative school placement is our entry criteria is not a set in stone amount. Our exit criteria. Once a student is on campus at Excel, they will be there for a minimum of 9 weeks. Their progress during that 9 weeks will determine their return. So the students will need to show mastery of their behavioral goals for 3 weeks at a time as they move up tiered levels. So they'll enter with a high level of support, and by the time they reach the 3rd level, they would have the least amount of support to ensure that they'll be able to go back to their homeschool and be successful. So the students' exit from the program will truly be dependent on their mastery of their behavioral goals. The final major process we've worked on at the committee up to this point is the transition back to the homeschool. And this process outlines the supports that the student will have when they return back to their school, including what staff from our program will assist the student upon their return. Our committee is going, a lot of our committee members will start summer vacation in about a week and a half. So prior to the summer break, we are working on finalizing 2 major projects. One is resources for homeschools. I mentioned that homeschools try to do a lot of things for their students before they want to consider an off-campus interventions. Homeschools want the students to be successful, and so we've developed resources to assist the homeschool in implementing interventions prior to consideration for Excel. Those resources are being vetted now by the committee, and we're working on finalizing those in the next week or 2. The last thing that we are working on is what will be the expectations for our parents when students are enrolled in our program. Both how will we support our parents, but also what will we expect our parents to do as far as participation in classes or coming and observing their child, participating in meetings, those kinds of things. I'm just going to put the clicker down. Okay, school team meetings. The final update I wanted to share is that over the past several weeks, I've met with all of our elementary principals. A lot of them also included their school leadership team in those conversations to discuss both the program itself and possible students that may need our support. Through those meetings that I held several weeks ago, I'm in the process now of holding follow-up meetings about those same identified students. And I'm using those follow-up meetings with the schools to determine which students will need home visits from our staff over the summer, and also to determine where our staff will be to start the school year. So while students may not start on the Excel campus, our staff will be in the schools with students that we've identified as needing additional support based on data we have up through mid-March. So that's what we're doing with those follow-up meetings. And that, as you can tell, is the end of the slideshow, and now I'm actually at the end. So I do thank you all for letting me have this opportunity, and also for the support and encouragement I've gotten as we've worked to get the program off the ground.
It sounds like you've made some great progress, and you're
We got a
off to good start.
hard-working
Yeah.
group of people.
Any questions for Ms. Taylor?
How long will a student be at their home school before you pull them to go to Excel?
So the committee developed some entry criteria, which outlines that we would like for the students to have opportunities to go through tiered interventions before being considered for the program. So that would look like access to just the basic core that's available to everyone, but also tier 2 and 3 behavioral interventions. So we're not setting a timeline because we recognize that some students may start the school year with a higher level of need and have already had interventions implemented in previous years. But we're definitely going to be in the schools with those students until we're able to determine what their need is for off-campus supports. We're just trying to be real cautious and ensuring we're not taking students off their homeschool campus without really being thoughtful about that.
Any other questions? All right, great. Thank you very much. Thanks for being with us. All right, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Beth. Under your leadership, we're looking for great things from the Excel program, and so many people are coming together to make sure that that this initiative is successful, and we certainly appreciate the board's support as we move forward with this. So, thank you.
All right. Now we're ready for executive session, and I forgot to say thank you, hello to all the folks watching us live also, so hopefully that's all going well. So we do need a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of considering the following matters in such order as the board deems appropriate. contractual issues, a discussion of a contractual issue, and employment matters, 2 administrative appointments. Following the executive session meeting, the board will reconvene into regular session to announce the matters considered and to take any actions as may be necessary. So we need a motion for executive session.
So moved to move into executive session?
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. All right, good. Let's meet back there at no later than 6:30. Good, thank you. Okay, while we were in executive session, we heard some contractual issues and also had 2 employment matters. So we need 2 motions. The first one is for administrative appointment A for Aiken Intermediate School Assistant Principal. Do I hear a motion for that?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend that we accept the recommendations of personnel.
So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the recommendation of the personnel. Any discussion on that? All those in favor, raise your hand. That's 8, so that's unanimous. And the Aiken Intermediate School Assistant Principal, Miss Alicia Kennard. All right, so the next one is administrative appointment number B, or letter B, for Belvedere Elementary School Principal. Do I have a motion for that?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend that we accept the recommendation of personnel office. Second.
So it's been moved and seconded that we accept the recommendation of the Personnel Office. Any discussion on that one? All those in favor, raise your hand. That's 8, so that's unanimous. Miss Allison Long is Belvedere Elementary Principal. All right, so that concludes our business for tonight. So we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So it's been moved and seconded, and all those in favor, raise your hand. All right, that's 8. So we'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you. Be safe going home.